Hello, and you're very welcome to another edition of the JMac podcast. I'm John McMahon, and of course, this show is to you by orgaretro.com. Check the website out and use my promo code JMac podcast to get 15% off on their website. And today, I'm joined by former Kerry footballer Sean O'Sullivan to touch on his illustrious Kerry career and the COVID situation, the current state of affairs, and a few predictions for Kerry's year ahead. So it's good stuff today. So, Sean, how's tricks?
Good, John. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's not a great day down in the kingdom here today. It's wet and wintry, which is hard to believe, seeing that we're nearly in June at this stage. But look, I suppose the football is back, and both club and county, and we're happy to be back at it, John. Something to give us a release after a difficult 12, 18 months now at this stage,
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant and great that the game's back. And I suppose, have you been casting an eye on Kerry's performances in the last two weekends, Sean? Obviously, a great win against Galway the first week and an absolutely thrilling game against the Dubs last Sunday.
Yeah, I have. I saw both games. The first day out, Kerry were very impressive. I know people will point to a poor Galway performance, and that's fair enough, but I thought Kerry were excellent on the day. Their forward movement was really, really good. Obviously, Kerry's issues are never really up front. We always feel that we can go out and score, match any team in the country for our scoring prowess, John. And we proved that against Galway. The movement of our forwards, particularly the two Cliffords, Killian Spillane, in the inside line, there was constant interchange of those three in particular, and the Galway defence just had no answer to it really. So yeah, it set us up for a nice game on Sunday in Thurles, which I suppose on the other side will show Kerry's Achilles heel at the moment in terms, I suppose, of our defence. They do get a lot of criticism. And I suppose it was brought to the fore on Sunday when we conceded goals that they'll be disappointed with themselves. It's not, I'm not having a dig at the guys that are playing back there. They're all very good defenders, and they'll look back at the video of the 4 goals they conceded, and they'll probably make a case that they could all have been avoided. Just a little bit of lack of concentration on the Con O'Callaghan one in particular, just losing your man in a phase of play, ball watching a little bit, which shouldn't really happen at that level. So to be 6 points down at half time and to come back and draw the game will be brilliant for confidence. It'll be a real boost for them, hopefully later on in the summer when they're going to get tested again. But certainly for Peter Keane and his management team, those goals will be disappointing and something to work on the training ground going forward. Roscommon this weekend, an opportunity to get to a league semi-final, which they should do really. But definitely positives and negatives. The positive is our forwards are still up there with the best in the country. Negatives, we definitely have to tidy things up at the back if we fancy winning an All-Ireland, John.
Yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. And I suppose the game Sunday, obviously, we're probably looking towards Dave Clifford again against the Dubs. He was very good and he shone through at the end. And I suppose how important is David Clifford to this Kerry team, Sean? And I suppose the progression, if they do want to win that illustrious All-Ireland title, Sean?
He's very important, John. Of course he is. He's, for such a young man, he's already developed into your talisman, really. He's your... the phrase gets banded around, but he's your go-to guy, I suppose, up front. But I also think that, the guys around him are starting to show a lot more responsibility. And I think, that's what Dublin have proved by winning their All-Irelands, John, is that, you can possibly keep one or two of the Dublin forwards quiet on a particular day, but can you do it consistently? And can you do it, if you do keep a couple of them quiet, the other 4 will step up. And that's what Kerry are now trying to develop. So when that day does come, when David is quiet, or kept, relatively quiet as much as you can, that the other forwards step up. And I think going back to last year's disappointment against Cork, that probably shone through a little bit in that, David didn't have a particularly good day at the office, and the other forwards when we needed them, bar Killian Spillane, who came on and played very well. The rest of the forwards really weren't able to step in where David, usually does. So that's definitely going forward one thing that Kerry will have to look at, and that, can we get enough scores or enough contribution from the rest of our forwards if David does have the off day. Now, you'd be hoping that David doesn't have too many of those. He rarely does. He's just a joy to watch. I was lucky enough to see David early on in his career in development squads down here. I had him from 14, 15 and 16. And John, it was a pleasure to watch him. You just knew straight away that this guy had the Gaelic football world at his feet. And if he wanted to continue on and his career was going to head in one way, in the trajectory that we felt it was going to go, that he was going to end up as one of the top forwards in the country. And I mean, he is, even at 22 years of age, he's quality, So, but even the best forwards in the world are going to have an off day. And if he does, then other people, like the aforementioned Killian Spillane, his brother Paddy now, who's getting his chance, Shawnee Shea's quality, out in the 40, pulling the strings. Stephen O'Brien is back in the fold. Can we get the contribution, as I said, from the other guys? If you can, then and you can keep it tight at the back, which we already alluded to, then Kerry have a real chance. But David Clifford is huge. He plays a huge part in Kerry's chances. Keeping him fit will be obviously a priority. He rarely gets injured, to the young fella, in fairness to him. He's tough out. He's well able to look after himself on the pitch. So hopefully he has a clean bill of health for the summer, John, and leads us to glory, which we'd really, really hope down here. It's about time now that somebody stopped the Dubs, I suppose, and why not Kerry,
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I suppose, how far away are Kerry from Dublin? Because we did obviously see on Sunday, maybe there was a bit of shadow boxing from the Dublin point of view, but how close are Kerry to the Dubs, Sean? Because it was a fantastic game Sunday. It ended in a draw. Last minute penalty, JMac giving it away. Dublin were rattled. John Small went off injured. Brian Fenton needs a partner at midfield. So there is a few signs there that Kerry are getting very close, Sean.
Well, yeah, I don't know how close they are, John, to be honest. Like, those things that you just mentioned about Dublin, like, obviously I know he wasn't there, but Desi Farrell and Mick Gavin will come away from Sunday having learnt a lot as well. And I mean, that's a great position for them to be in too. I mean, okay, they've won their 6 in a row. You kind of think, geez, how can these guys improve? But they can. That's the scary thing. They came away having learnt lessons as well on Sunday. And you just mentioned a few, who's the ideal partner for Brian Fenton? He probably needs a guy who's going to sit in and do a bit of defensive work and let Fenton just go and do his thing. Yes, Small is injured now. Does he need a replacement? It didn't look too good. They conceded 118, so obviously they're fallible as well at the back. So they have questions, and they have things to go away and work on as well. So, even though they're fantastic champions and they've proved they're the best team in the country for the last 6 years, they still have things to work on. In terms of how close Kerry are to Dublin, I wouldn't read too much into Sunday. I know we got the draw in the end, and we did maybe highlight a few things where we could get at Dublin. But you have to take into account, it is only the league. The teams are only back. Dublin have a few to come back in yet. And, Dublin they're a real different animal in the championship, John. They're just a real different animal. Kerry will be a different animal as well. But how have Kerry closed the gap? Possibly a little bit. Not based on last year's championship, because, I mean, you're only as good as your last championship game, and Kerry went out to Cork. So time will tell. Will Kerry get the opportunity to test themselves against Dublin in the summer? I believe they will. And then that's when we'll see where the gap really is. But have they closed it? Possibly a little bit. But as I say, time will tell as to how much actually they've reigned in Dublin. But I wouldn't read too much into the game on Sunday. As good as it was for us to get the draw, having been down at half time and looking like we were vulnerable at the back, the second half performance was a lot better and probably deserved the draw in the end.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. And I suppose the frightening thing, maybe from a supporter point of view, Dublin can up the ante for the championship, and yeah, we've absolutely no doubt they will. And it was a great game on Sunday. And I suppose, Sean, we can kind of touch on to your personal career. Obviously 4 Munster titles, 4 All-Irelands, and 3 National League titles for Kerry over the years, and seriously impressive stuff, Sean. A very nice CV to have, and very enjoyable time spent for the kingdom.
Yeah, it was, John. Yeah. Look, I suppose, growing up in Kerry, football is never too far away from from the house, and it was no different here. I was interested in football from a very, very young age. There's pictures of me dressed head to toe in the old Kerry gear. You're wearing an old Cavan jersey there, I see, and there's pictures of me in the old Kerry tops from a very young age, John, 4 or 5. And obviously, look, I suppose different to now when you can, like here in Cremon, you can go up to the pitch on a Sunday morning, and we have our little academy, the Mini Maroons, it's called. And it's organised stuff from the age of 6 up, whereas back then, there was nothing really for a 5 or 6 year old. You had the back garden probably, and that was it. And if you were lucky enough to be brought to the football pitch, maybe to see a minor game or a senior game, well, you got to kick around at half time at the post or something. So that's where it took off for me. And from a very early age, I was very aware of Kerry football and what Kerry football was. It was around the mid 80s, I'd say, when I just really got into, what Kerry football meant. And I remember my first All-Ireland watching at home was 1986. Kerry and Tyrone, my parents were gone up to it, and my grandmother, God rest her, was minding us. And Kerry had an awful first half. Tyrone were well on top, but I remember going in behind the couch actually and not wanting to watch the second half. But my grandmother let a roar off anyway, because Pat Spillane got a goal. He flew through the air and punched the ball into the net and got Kerry going. And I remember peeking my head out from behind the couch and thinking, hold on, there could be something happening here. And of course, history, the rest is history. Kerry went on to win it, and I think I was hooked then, really, John. That was the real hook, And then you just play away with your club, and then you start to go to Kerry games, and obviously that period for Kerry was a very lean period. Cork were starting to take over in Munster. I remember travelling to Munster finals with my father and my uncle, and up to Cork and getting hammerings above in Cork and back down. And the following year, you had to wait again, of course, a full 12 months to the summer to see could you catch Cork and Killarney, and you'd be beaten again. And there was no end to it, really. But I suppose the only bright thing for us that came out of that period was a man by the name of Maurice Fitzgerald, who, for someone like me, he was my first hero, really. He was the first guy I looked up to, and he gave us hope. He gave us hope that we'd come again. And, of course, Paddy O'Shea then took over in 96. And we won that All-Ireland that was badly needed, really, in 97. So for me, as a 17-year-old in 97, being up in Croke Park, John, watching Kerry win the All-Ireland, that was another hook for me. And the following year, I made the minors and drove on then onto the 21s and the seniors. So I think, for young guys and girls down here, the hook is important. I've mentioned it a few times. What is the hook? And for me, it was seeing that 86 All-Ireland, seeing Kerry win in 97 for real up in Croke Park. And that was what I needed then to get involved myself. And it was great. Look, sure, we to be part of that Kerry panel throughout the noughties was just incredible. I mean, what was it? Was it 6 or 7 All-Ireland finals in a row? Now I know we lost a few, but it was just incredible times. It was a really, really talented, driven, committed bunch of guys that just came back year after year looking to get better and drive each other on. I didn't make the team every year. A couple of years I did. But you always felt part of something special, even if you weren't starting. You just felt that you were really part of a special group. And if you weren't wearing the number 10 or the 12, you were trying to put pressure on the guy who was wearing it, so you were getting the best out of him, and vice versa. If you had the jersey, he was putting pressure on you. And that's what drove it. That's what got us to All-Ireland final year after year. And and that's what got us our medals at the end of the day. And that's the same way Dublin are at the moment, John. They have guys inside in the panel who are just absolutely driving each other to the hilt. And until you have that inside in a county setup, you won't be successful. Kerry are getting there. Mayo are getting there. Tyrone are a team who I think are getting there. And, you know, the rest of the counties around Ireland, you have to strive for that. If you can strive and get that type of quality into your panel where you have competition for every place on the field, you have competition for the bench, then you'll go places. And that's what we had from 2000, the early 2000s, all the way up to 2009, 2010. Obviously dropped off for a few years, but came back then. I walked away from it in 2009, but they came back again then in 14 and won it. But it's a long time since 2014 now, John. So hopefully this new batch of guys will get us over the line.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested kind of to hear your perspective on that as well, Sean. Obviously, you were saying the Kingdom were so dominant for the likes of 9 or 10 years and getting there and thereabouts. So that does make you think this Dublin dominance at this current minute of time, Sean. How long do you feel that can go on for? Like, do you feel teams really are starting to close the gap on them? And obviously, you were around for 10 years. Dublin have 6 in a row, going for 7 in a row this year. So, you know, is that gap starting to close as the gap they close in Kerry?
My worry is, John, that there's not enough. Like, I know I mentioned Kerry, obviously, Mayo, Tyrone. Like, when you go back to the noughties, I mean, you know, you had you had a bigger selection of teams who could win your All-Ireland. So obviously you had ourselves, Tyrone, Armagh were knocking around, Mayo were knocking around, Donegal were thereabouts, Dublin themselves were there, Cork were always, obviously, you know, Cork would often say, you know, that only for us, they'd have made a lot of All-Ireland finals, that we had some great battles with Cork that we just came out the right side of, and it could have been them instead of us, you know. Galway were there, you know, so all of a sudden there I'm nearly up to 8 or 9 teams who realistically at the start of every year could win an All-Ireland. Now, has that dropped off? It has, unfortunately. So now you're really every year looking at your Dublins, your Kerrys, your Mayos, your Tyrones. I think Donegal are probably still in that picture. Galway, I'm not sure. Cork, I don't know. So, you know, your pickings are slim all of a sudden, and particularly now in the year, the last year and this year where it's knockout, that makes it even more difficult, you know. So you asked me, will Dublin's dominance continue for another while? I think it might, John, as hard as it is for me to say it, because obviously I think for the good of the game, you probably need to see that things change a bit. But it's difficult to see. It will come to an end eventually. It'll have to. But whether that'll be in the next couple of years, I don't know. I'd hope so. But it's hard to say at the moment because Dublin just have still that array of quality within their team. Who's to know? They could suffer from injuries, which you'd hate to see. You don't wish that on anyone. But again, even if Dublin were to lose a couple of guys through injury, like even at the weekend with Small there, they have the quality to come in to replace. I mean, one of my friends sent me a screenshot the other day of Dublin's lineup to play Kerry when it was announced, and he took a screenshot of their under-20 team that lost the All-Ireland final to Galway back in the end of last year. Not one under-20 made it onto the senior panel, and he just said, what other county in the country can afford not to promote at least one, if not 2 under-20s? You know, Kerry have done it. Every other county in the country, I'm sure, are using under-20 players, and Dublin don't have to. I think that sums up where they are, John, to be honest.
Yeah, it's frightening as well, Sean, because Kieran Archer, he was on Dublin under-20s last year, and he just looks like an outrageous talent. So he's definitely one for the future, which is a scary thing as well from a Dublin point of view. But it's mad, Sean. Like I was watching there a couple of months ago. I think it was the last time Dublin were betting the championship, and Donegal bet them, and it was just absolutely euphoria that day. I know Kerry won the All Ireland that year, and it was a great time for yourselves. But it's crazy what a win against Dublin in the championship would do for the GAA as a whole, Sean, because I think when we're getting to the latter ends of the championship, a lot of fans are just getting browned off because Dublin keep getting over the line, and it's just getting very suppose, boring at times as well, Sean, you know?
Well, the latter stages are, yes, but I mean, you know, you still have the romantic side of the GAA, you know, obviously for yourselves up there last year. I mean, what a fantastic year for Cavan it was, you know, Tipperary down here in Munster, you know, and that there's still that side to it. So we can't, you know, we can't just focus too much on Dublin and why them losing might be a good thing. You know, it's not Dublin's fault. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, the GAA come under criticism for, look, without going too much into it, about the support that Dublin gets and so on, and the population and etc. That's not their fault. You know, they're just beating what's put in front of them. But yeah, it certainly is having an effect on people, the amount of people going to games. I'm sure, obviously, we haven't been able to in a while. Hopefully that day will come again soon. The viewing figures, I'm sure, will probably be affected if Dublin's dominance continues. But at the same time, it's still a very, very, the GAA is still very parochial. It's still very county based, and you're still going to follow your county through thick and thin. And, you know, if your team happen to be going up against Dublin tomorrow, you know, you're still going to believe deep down that maybe there's a chance you can beat them. And until that goes, you know, until that feeling goes, it's still very, very much the GAA, you know, and it's still the GAA we love. But if it gets to a stage where, you know, you're not even feeling like jumping on the train to go up to see Kerry in Dublin or Cavan in Dublin or Mayo in Dublin because you just know it's a foregone conclusion, then that's really when things may have to be looked at. But other teams just have to keep trying. You know, trying to, you know, Manchester United were very dominant in England during the 90s. As a Liverpool fan, that was very hard to take. But what do? You don't throw all your Liverpool jerseys into the fire. You keep, you know, wishing and hoping, and eventually, you know, the tide turns, and we'd be hoping maybe the same will happen in the GAA.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't touch on United, John. It's a touchy subject at the minute.
Well, I had to get it in there, John. I had to get it in
there. No comment. And to touch back onto your personal career, Sean, as I alluded to at the start, 4 Munster titles, 4 All-Irelands, 3 National League titles. So 4 Munster titles, Sean. You won them in very competitive Munster campaigns. Probably when Cork and Kerry were having absolutely great battles, and unfortunately probably not seen around this time, unfortunately. But what was it like to tag on them 4 Munster titles, Sean, and play with some of the best players we've ever seen play the game?
Yeah, it was. And if you go back to the early noughties as well, John, Limerick were actually very good. Limerick were good. We beat Limerick in one Munster final. I think it was 2004, actually. It was Jack O'Connor's first year in charge. And I think it was Liam Kearns, actually, from Kerry that was over Limerick at the time. He was doing a great job with them. So Limerick were really coming that time, but Cork and Kerry, it was mainly, Cork and Kerry. Sure, look, the Kerry-Cork games could have gone anyway. I know that, you know, we gave Cork maybe a few heavy defeats up in Croke Park in All-Ireland semi-finals and final, but in 2007 and 2006. But the Munster games were always very hard to call, because I suppose you were either in Cork or Killarney. There were great occasions, especially for the supporters, particularly in Killarney. John, I don't know, have you ever came down to sample a Munster final in Killarney in July? Oh my God, you should definitely come down. It's a fantastic weekend. The buzz around the town. The Cork supporters come down the night before. Sometimes, usually, it clashes with the famous Ring of Kerry cycle as well. So town of Killarney is absolutely jammed, and it's just a fantastic atmosphere. And the buzz nearly translates itself down onto the pitch. It gives you a real pep in your step when you run out onto Fitzgerald Stadium, and it's packed to the gills for Munster final day. And those games could have gone anyway. Honestly, you know, there was a few draws. There was replays back up in Cork. There was a draw in Cork, a replay back down in Killarney, and just incredible times. And yeah, great players. And the Kerry Cork guys, as much as we went at each other on the day, there was always good respect for each other outside of the pitch, because you have to take into account that these guys would have been going to college with each other, and some guys would have been knocking around each other with Munster teams and the international rules team. So even though we went hell for leather to beat each other, there was that kind of unspoken respect of each other as well. And as I said earlier on the call, Cork will look back and think, Jesus, if it wasn't for such good Kerry teams, we could have a few more All-Irelands ourselves, because they were an excellent bunch of players and deservedly won their All-Ireland in 2010. They got over the line, and I suppose not many Kerry people would admit to this, but if it wasn't going to be Kerry that year, I actually didn't feel too bad that it was Cork, because they'd been trying a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So I was kind of watching on obviously the TV and clips over the years, but then Munster finals, Sean, always piping hot days, and wherever we would have been, and just great games and great occasions, and you've seen the draws, you've seen the replays, just fantastic games. Gooch and Daniel Goulding probably having shootouts and just special days, Sean. And I suppose the big thing you can probably say, and I think I was talking to Daniel Goulding last week about it, it's just a pity the kind of sting's gone out of it in recent years.
It has a little bit, yeah, it has. Kerry have obviously, up until last year, Kerry have dominated. I think Cork have certainly probably started a good rebuilding phase under Ronan McCarthy. Cian O'Neill is in there as well, former Kerry coach, so he's a big addition to the setup. And I think Ronan, obviously the win last year, as much of a sucker punch it was for us, it's given Cork a great lift, even though they didn't back it up against Tipperary. But however, that can happen. But certainly, that win over Kerry gave Cork football a real boost, and a boost they badly needed. So I would say that, even though I'd fancy Kerry to turn things around this year, obviously they have to play Clare first, and then maybe meet Cork. But if they do come up against Cork again, I would fancy them. But definitely Cork, maybe that little bit of, I wouldn't say fear, but maybe a little bit of, trepidation has gone out of their, trying to beat Kerry now. They know they can beat them, and they'll come to Killarney, or I think it's in Killarney this year if they do meet. Hoping to turn one over on them again. But certainly, yeah, the sting had gone out of it for a while. Kerry were dominant in Munster. Jesus, there must be fellas in this current Kerry setup with, I don't know how many Munster medals they have, but they have a good few. They'd need a big plaque on the mantelpiece from anyway, John, to fill it. But look, Munster medals in Kerry, as great and all as they are, John, the one that matters is the All-Ireland, and they have to take it one game at a time, of course, but they'll be hoping to go further than what they did last year, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be great to see and shake things up. And moving on from that, Sean, 4 All-Ireland titles and seriously impressive stuff. And we can always remember the battles in the early days against the likes of Mayo, and obviously Mayo probably still haven't got over the line. And but then looking back to them days, 04, 06, Kerry, unbelievable teams. And what was it like to probably be part of them All-Ireland winning team, Sean? And as I did reference, players like the Gooch, the O'Shea's, everyone, Paul Galvin, great times, Sean.
Yeah, so I played my first one in 02 actually. We lost to Armagh. Gutted. It was I wouldn't have sleepless nights over many things, John, but that's one that comes into the head sometimes, because we were 4 points up at half time, and I wouldn't say were we in control. I wouldn't exactly say we were in control, but we were comfortable as you can be at half time in an All-Ireland final. Things were going pretty much to plan. And in fairness to Armagh, they just came out in the second half and they got a goal, and they used that the momentum of that to drive on and win and beat us. And that was tough to take, because it was my first All-Ireland, and I was only 22, so it was tough to take. But like anything, the jockey gets back on the horse, you've got to go at it again, and we drove on. And we obviously went on a great run then from 04. Jack O'Connor came in 04, John, and he changed things around a little bit. He saw what Tyrone and Armagh had brought to the game, and he felt that Kerry needed to change a little bit in terms of we could still go out and play our football that we were accustomed to, and we loved to play the game the way we felt it should be played. We had fantastic natural footballers, as you just mentioned, Gooch, the O'Sheas, Seamus Moynihan, Eamon Fitzmaurice, Paul Galvin, Tom Sullivan, Mike McCarthy, the list goes on. Just real natural ballers. But I think we just had to develop a little bit of steel into our game as well. And once we got the mix, then we were very, very difficult to beat. And, won in 04, lost the final in 05. I wasn't part of that, unfortunately. I decided to go travelling to Australia with a couple of friends after the 04 All-Ireland, and I stayed for 2005. So I missed out on that one, but watched it and felt for the lads because it was a game that they put their heart and soul into against Tyrone in 05 and just came out the wrong side. And then we bounced back. I came home and managed to get back onto the panel again for 06, 07. The back-to-back, it was brilliant. It was difficult to do back-to-back All-Irelands that time. So it was a great achievement. Kieran Donaghy came onto the scene, brought us something different again. Lost in 08 again to Tyrone, which could have gone either way, even though Tyrone ran out, I think it was 5 points winners in the end. But there was a period in that second half when it could have gone either way. I remember Declan O'Sullivan, who's now under 20 manager, working with Declan. Was it Pascal McConnell pulled off a great save kind of midway through the second half. I was warming up at the time and I was sure it was nestling in the bottom corner. And if that goes in, who knows, So lost that one, but bounced back again then in 09 to win in 09. So some great days, some tough days as well along the way. But they say you learn from the tough days, which I think we did, because when we lost in All-Ireland, it was like we always bounced back again and won one, maybe not the next year, but the year after. So, but just brilliant players, John, and not just brilliant players, brilliant people, brilliant guys, just constantly pushing each other to get the best. And there was bad nights of training when fellas were having to be pulled apart, but they were winners, they were just pure winners. And, they might be at each other's throat 1 minute and we'd be down in the hotel after having our dinner after training and they'd be laughing and joking with each other. And that's what you wanted. That's a winning environment. And as I said earlier on, if you can create that within your group where for that, hour and 15 minutes of training, fellas are just trying to get the best out of each other, and they can walk off the field and be friends and be teammates and have a great spirit off the pitch after. You've got a winning formula there. You need a little bit of luck along the way then, of course, but you've got a great basis to start with. And that's what Dublin have at the moment. They just have this unbreakable bond between them that I'd love to be a fly in the wall at their training sessions, because it was the same for us in the 2000s. It was just hell for leather inside in those sessions, and that's where the All-Irelands were won, in the likes of the places like Killarney and Tralee, where you were training hard, and then you went out on the game day and you just tried to replicate it, and we managed to do that more often than not.
And of course, the show is sponsored by orgaretro.com. Check the website out and use my promo code JMac Podcast to get 15% off on their website. And that kind of, suppose, that bounce back ability as well, Sean, kind of coming back year after year, maybe having defeats and then maybe winning all Ireland after that. And suppose coming back after the defeats as well, Sean. So to win All Irelands after tough, they're obviously very tough things to obviously win and lose. But Sean, that bounce back ability, the kind of the strength, fantastic kind of result by the Kerry team over the years.
It was, yeah, it was. And, you can't, as much as the defeats and would hurt you, and I think this is any good advice for a young lad out there, or a young girl, because I would have taken defeat very hard when I was young. Even at, club level, minor level, and then obviously into county. You can't wallow in it. You can't wallow in it. If you do, it's not good for you. Somebody has to win. Like, my opinion is somebody has to win the bloody game. And you can't win them all. So, and a lot of it comes down to luck as well. That instance with Declan nearly scoring the goal there against Tyrone. And we had bits of luck along the way as well, John. Do you know what I mean? The 07 All-Ireland final, even though we were the better team against Cork, straight after half-time, Cusack, was it the Cork goalkeeper? Was it Cusack? Makes a mistake, and Kieran Donaghy kicks the ball into an empty net. Do you know what I mean? That's a bit of luck. So you have to take all that into account. But yeah, we didn't wallow in those defeats. They were tough to take. I mean, you were after sacrificing a year of your life to get to an All-Ireland final, and you were beaten, and you were kind of going, geez. But we'd go away on our holiday, John, and believe me, we definitely wouldn't wallow on our holiday anyway. We made sure that there was no drowning the sorrows. We drank all right, but it was more to have the fun and have the crack. And on those trips, you'd make a pact again, and you'd say, look, we probably didn't do this well enough last year, or maybe we got a little bit complacent in certain areas. That won't happen us next year, and you'd be back again in November or December doing your weights or doing your winter sessions, and you'd be looking to go again, and the batteries would be recharged, and we managed to bounce back again and win an All-Ireland, but you couldn't wallow in the defeat for too long, because you just had to get back up on the horse again and go at it. And we knew that we had such a good band and quality of player that you'd be back thereabouts again the following year anyway, and particularly with the qualifiers, even if you lost out in Munster, you could get on a roll in the qualifiers and come through the back door. So you'd end up in an All-Ireland quarter-final anyway, and from there you've a chance. So yeah, it was great times, I have to say. Yeah, it was great times. It was just, you look back and the medals are great, and you read out my CV there, and it's lovely to hear. But the medals are just a kind of, I suppose, a physical memory of the times, John. The real memories will be up here for the rest of your life, because the friends and the times you had together. You'll be able to look at the medals when you're an old man and show your kids and grandkids and show them what you got out of it. But it's way more than just medals,
Yeah, I think I read an interesting quote, someone saying medals are just a receipt of the success you had. So I suppose it just goes to show, Sean, and it's great to get the hands on them. And I suppose obviously the winning culture that's kind of instilled within the Kerry setup and always was there, Sean. And as I said, could be playing with the best players we've ever played. But what it's like to be part of that winning culture, Sean, and just kind of break onto that winning culture and just to be part of such a successful setup, Sean, really,
Well, the big thing for me, John, was you could never cut corners. You could never get lazy. You could never decide to go into training and take a night off, if you wish. You weren't allowed. First of all, by management, but mainly by your peers, by your teammates. You were called out in a second if it wasn't up to scratch, And I mean, I'm even talking, even a young fella who might come in and be trying to make an impression in the panel. For instance, David Moran, who has gone on to be one of the best midfielders ever to play for Kerry. I remember one of his first nights in, we were playing a possession game, and he was on Dara O'Shea. And Dara, maybe guys in other counties would say to themselves, well, here's a young fella after coming in off the under-21s. It's his first night in here. He's probably the future. He's probably a guy you have to look after, And it was quite the opposite. Dara didn't hold back one bit on David. Dara saw David Moran as a threat. He said, there's no way this young fella's coming in here taking my jersey, and he didn't give David an inch. And David must have been driving home in the car that night thinking, my God, is this, what have I got myself into here? But what an education for David, he knew exactly what it was going to take to come into Kerry training and play in, A versus B games and be marking Dara O'Shea, or be marking a Tommy Griffin, or be marking a Micheál Quirke or a Seamus Scanlon, or who it may have been at the time. William Kirby was there. That's what you needed to do to cut it, Whereas Dara could have decided that he was going to take it nice and easy on this fella, let him bed in, it would have been no good for him. It would have been no good for Darry either. You know, he that was just his character. That was the way he got on with it. And that was the same all over the panel, John. It was the same all over the panel. If you felt you were going to get an easy ride, or if you felt you were going to get special treatment, or you could, as I said, cut a corner, whether it was in long runs or a sprint, if you didn't hit the line or finish at the line or turn a cone the right way, or you were called out. There was no inches given, and you need that again. That has to be part of your group if you want to be successful. And you know, I've been involved in teams where those things creep in a little bit, and if you allow them to creep in, you know, they'll, you know, people will take advantage. You have to cut that out straight away. But it has to come from within the group. Management can't see everything. They can't push it all the time because they have so much going on in terms of trying to put systems in place, trying to pick the players that are on form, making sure you're ticking all the boxes in training, whether it be your conditioning, your football, your skills, your strength work, whatever. So it has to come from the leaders in your group, and we had a cohort of leaders there. Dara, Tomas, Seamus Moynihan, Galvin, Donaghy was a fantastic leader. Declan O'Sullivan, great leader. Those guys just didn't leave you. They wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it, and it reflected then in terms of the success we had. You need that in every group, and the best teams. If you go back through the best teams to ever play any sport, that Kerry team, Dublin now, the All Blacks, the Manchester United team of the 90s, they all had a cohort of leaders who just wouldn't leave standard slip, and that has to be a given in any group.
Yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. And so, Sean, the Kerry forwards over the years, I think we're always intrigued by them, and probably the best forwards we've ever really seen in the game. And suppose even to touch on the likes of yourself, Paul Galvin, the Gooch, Kieran Donaghy, even Marcus Fitzgerald, and Mike Frank Russell. I don't even think he gets half the praise for the career he had as well. I think he scored a great point against Dubs in 01, who was played a couple of days ago there. It was absolutely outrageous. So just to touch on some of the forwards, Sean, and obviously I suppose when you were playing as well, I suppose your competition at the end of the day was probably the great Paul Galvin.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so that half forward line, I would have been going for the half forward line, John, which was very, very difficult. So you had Paul. I'll get back to Paul in a second. But you had the likes of Liam Hassett. You had Owen Brosnan. You had Darren O'Sullivan. You had Declan O'Sullivan. My own club mate, Donica Walsh, then came on later in the scene, another fantastic player. So you know, it was difficult, John. It was difficult, and look, as I said at the start of the call, I didn't get to play every day, and that was hard. But there was no point sulking. You couldn't sulk. You had to, you know, you had to get out onto the pitch at training, and whether you were picked on the A team or the B team or whatever you wanted to call them, you had to go and try and prove what you could do. But going back to you mentioned Paul. Yeah, Paul came onto the scene in 04. He was knocking around a few years earlier than that, but just didn't make it. But he came back in 04 under Jack O'Connor. And I mentioned that Jack wanted to bring that bit of steel to the Kerry team. And sure, look, no better man. Just, you know, epitomised everything that we were as a team really in 04, John. Because, okay, Paul gets remembered for his tackling and his bravery and his ability to get in under breaking ball and, you know, win the dirty ball, you know, and all that. But Paul Galvin was and is one of the most skillful footballers that I've ever played with. A fantastic score taker, equally adept off both feet, a very, very good kick passer. Just had all the ball playing abilities. But what Paul did was he was able to mix it. He was able to mix the ball playing with the dirty work and the real graft. And I often compare him to Dooher. You know, Brian Dooher is one of the best footballers ever to play. Dooher did the same. Dooher loved the real hard stuff around the middle. But my God, could the man score? Could he kick a pass? Could he pick out a pass? You know, just great players. They were able to mix it both ways. But yeah, as I said, John, it was a difficult time as a forward because the array of quality was just unbelievable. But you found ways then to help because I recall, playing in those trial games in training. If you weren't on the starting team, you were obviously down the other end, but you would have been marking one of the starting backs, if you get me. So I often would have been playing on Tomas O'Shea, and Tomas would, before the trial game would start, Tomas would come up to me and say, look, I'm more than likely going to be marking whoever it may be next Sunday, whether we were playing Mayo or playing Cork or Dublin or whoever it may be. And Tomas would have done homework on that player that he would have been marking. And he would ask me when I got on the ball in the game to possibly try different things. So, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. Maybe it may have been a real pacey wing forward. Maybe somebody like a Paul Flynn from Dublin or somebody like that. So Tomas would ask me to try and replicate what Paul Flynn would do. So rather than me going out playing my game, trying to maybe impress the management, which I tried anyway, you would probably try and do things to help Tomas prepare for Sunday. So you'd get on the ball and maybe take Tomas on more often than you would usually. And that would help him prepare. So in a way, even though you weren't getting your game time, John, and you weren't playing, you felt you helped. You felt you played your part in Tomas getting ready and preparing for his marker on Sunday. So again, that has to be a little bit of unselfishness in the group, and you're not looking for a pat on the back or anything like that, but at least inside in your own head, you can make peace with the fact that, okay, I'm not getting a start here, but I've done my bit during the week to help the group. And if you can have that kind of mentality running through your squad players who won't sulk because they can't get on the team or not getting on the team or not getting game time, again, you'll be successful because you'll have a real good mentality in your group. But the forwards were just, you mentioned Mike Frank Russell and Maurice Fitzgerald. Again, going back to 97, I don't know what age you are, John, but do you remember the 97 semi-final between Kerry and Cavan?
I would have been a couple of months old.
Would you? Jesus, I feel very old now. But the two of them combined for a fantastic goal in that game. If you watch it back, Maurice Fitzgerald had the ball outside around maybe it was just inside the 45-yard line, and he was back and forth. And next thing, he played this beautiful defence-splitting kick pass into Mike Frank, who literally just pivoted on his right foot and buried it in the bottom corner. And a crucial goal in that game, actually, because Cavan were well in it. But that just summed up the two of those guys. You had the artist outside in Morris, waiting and delaying until the ball was on. Absolutely outrageous pinpoint pass. And then you had the poacher supreme, Mike Frank, inside. Bang, one turn, bang, goal. And it won Kerry the game, really, and they went on to win the All-Ireland. So that was the quality. And we spoke about Kerry at the start of this call, John, about Kerry will always have the forwards. I'm involved with the under-20s at the moment, and there's some real natural forwards in there, they'll always be there in Kerry. It's just getting the overall mix, I suppose, right, is the issue here at the moment. But that'll come too.
Yeah, definitely. And so regarding the forwards, Colin Cooper wasn't bad, Sean.
Yeah, he was okay. Yeah. Look, I'll never forget the first night I met Colin. I was working in Killarney, and he was called into the panel. And I was travelling in the car that used to drive. We were training in Tralee, at the time, but I was working in Killarney. So a group of us would travel from Killarney over to Tralee. Diarmuid Murphy, the goalkeeper, was driving. So a few of us would travel, and this was non-COVID times, of course, where you could travel together, John. But there was only four of us, so you used to have plenty of room in the back of the car, so it was always nice to throw your gear bag into the boot and stretch out. But the car pulled up for me anyway, up at the top of New Street on this Tuesday or Thursday evening. I can't remember what it was. And I put my bag in the boot, and I opened the car, and there was a small red-haired fella looking out at me. And I was going to myself, who's this cheeky little fucker? He's after taking my seat in the back of the car, like, you know. But needless to say, I found out about an hour later. I knew who he was, of course, because we had seen him playing minor, you know. But he took to senior football, John, like a duck to water. I mean, that first session, you know, we knew he was special, and just to look. You know, I could stay here another hour with you, John, giving you examples of what he was able to do in training and the things he did in training. It was just incredible. You just had to be there, really. He was just able to play the game it's like he had 4 sets of eyes. He was able to do things that you could only really dream of in terms of in a game, right in the middle of a game, a fast-paced training game or a full-blown championship match. He was just able to do things that other guys couldn't, and it was just the quickness of thought that he had over other people. You know, before the ball was in his hands, Gooch knew where it was going to end up, and that's the biggest compliment you can pay the guy. He was just a real. He was just a fantastic footballer and a real great guy off the pitch. I'd be, you know, myself and Gooch would have been friendly enough. We both worked in Killarney, and you know, just a real good guy. And I'd often run into him now, and we'd stop and have the crack. A big Liverpool fan as well, John, which was no bad thing.
I love him apart from that. Yeah, and it just they'll all go down in Kerry folklore and GAA folklore for the rest of their life, Sean. And I was speaking to Seamus Moynihan there last summer. I think I'd done a podcast with him, and just another terrific leader, Sean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, Seamus, just, you know, like you talk about fellas demanding the best out of guys, Seamus would have been at the top of that list, you know. If standards were slipping at all, he had no problem in pulling fellas aside and letting them know it's not good enough. But a real, a real proud Kerry man. You know, we're all proud Kerry men, and wearing the jersey was the ultimate for us. But Jesus, if it ever shone through on somebody, it was Seamus. Like, you know, he just lived and breathed Kerry football, and still does. Often meet him at games, just loves it, and a real look. His performances and his, you know, his ball playing ability, his defending. You know, to me, Seamus was a guy who obviously ended up as a defender, you know, and played at 6 and played at 3. But Seamus could have played anywhere for you, John. I honestly believe that if Seamus Moynihan needed to go on goals for Kerry, he would have done a job in there for you. Like, you know, just a real all-round footballer, talented and driven. And again, for a young fella like me coming into a group that had Seamus Moynihan in there, what an education, what a learning curve, to have the likes of him in there, you know, helping you along. And he did. Seamus was a real help. He called you out when he had to, and he balled you out, and he got angry about it if things weren't being done right. But at the same time, he was always there for a word of advice to help you along, which was great for a young guy like me, or the Gooch, or Owen Brosnan coming into a panel. Darren O'Sullivan came in very young. Donncha Walsh, great guy to have around. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose kind of on your Kerry career as well, Sean, when you were finishing up and to pack your bags, what was the deciding factor, I suppose, to finish up with the Kerry senior footballers?
What was the deciding factor? Do you know, John, I suppose I had just felt that I'd been there since 2002, and this was 2009, and as good as things had gone for me, I felt that probably I was slipping down the pecking order a little bit. I didn't see much game time in 2009. I played in a few of the qualifiers, all right, but come All-Ireland quarter-final time, I had lost my place again. So I just felt that around that time was the hunger there for me, was my heart in it anymore. look, it goes without saying, you put a lot on hold for county football. You know, I was due to get married in 2010, which, you know, Mary, my wife, very, very supportive. She's from Antrim, actually. Very, very supportive in terms of my football career. Even now, taking on coaching jobs never stands in the way, even though we have a young family, John. So there would have been no issue with that if I wanted to stay on and play away for another couple of years. But to be honest with you, John, I just felt I would have been hanging around the place and probably not enjoying it. And I always said that there's no place in a panel for somebody like that, because you drag people down. You drag people down. And I think I was getting to the stage where I was getting probably a little pissed off that I wasn't getting more game time. And I didn't want to be that person in the group who gave off those negative vibes, because there's no place for you. There was no place for you. So we had won in 2009. I had got another All-Ireland medal and lucky to get it. And I just said, you know, why not go? Why not go now? And I have no regrets on it at all. I really don't, because to be honest with you, more or less, maybe 1 or 2 years after me walking away from it, I started getting involved with development squads down here. So I very much got involved in seeing the next group of young guys coming through. And that was my next passion. So, and I was still able to play away with the club, and still am playing away with the club and enjoying that. So it wasn't a real major decision for me to walk away from Kerry, because I knew that if I stayed, then I didn't want to be that guy bringing negativity into the group. So it was a decision that I made and had no regrets about, you know.
Yeah, and you came back in 2012, Sean, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
Came back in 2012 for a small stint. I had been going well with our divisional team here, Mid Kerry. We played in the county championship. We got to the final and lost to Dr. Crokes, I think. And I'd had a good year. And was enjoying my football. And Jack O'Connor rang me and asked me would I fancy coming back in to give it another shot. And I did. And you know what? That's what I probably regret, because I had just taken a role with that current Kerry minor management team. Mickey Ned O'Sullivan was in charge of them, and John O'Keefe was there. And I left that role to go in to give Kerry another crack. And, you know, I knew after a while in with Kerry that it wasn't the right decision. And I left actually after a couple of games in the league. And again, I think it was the right thing to do, because I just felt that I just wasn't enjoying it, and I didn't want to be in there not enjoying it. But I suppose the regret I had was that I lost my... I couldn't go back onto the minor setup, because they had given my role to Peter Keane. So right. And things kind of took off for Peter after that. So in a way, it's funny. Life is funny, John. Life is funny. But I have a kind of a regret going back in. But then again, on the other hand, as somebody said to me, I spoke to somebody recently about this. When Kerry football comes knocking, John, it's very hard to say no. And I didn't. I went back in, but it didn't work out. But however, that's life.
It's like getting back with an ex, Sean.
Yeah, I've done that too, and that didn't work out either.
How did that
go? No, not good. But quite happy with things in that field as well. But look, players have done it. I remember Scholes did it, didn't he? Scholes did it for United. Robbie Fowler came back to Liverpool. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it didn't work for me. But look, if I didn't do it, would I be sitting here thinking, God, what, you know, because should I have gone back? But I did it, and it didn't work out, and that's it.
Well, look, Sean, 4 All-Ireland titles, 4 Munster titles, 3 National Leagues. It's not too bad, so...
It's not too bad. You'll take it, yeah. John. Yeah. And
just kind of to push on from that, Sean, obviously, Kerry fans, as Paul O'Shea probably alluded to years and years ago, I'll not use the terms, it's too early in the morning for it, but he said that they're probably fairly demanding and all that goes with it. So, Sean, do you feel that is the kind of pressure on this kind of current Kerry team? And I suppose when you were playing for Kerry, did you feel that pressure from the fans?
Yeah, Always there, John. And if you're a Kerry footballer and you pull on a senior jersey, you might as well accept it as part of the package. When you pack your gear bag and you put in your boots and your socks and your shorts and your whatever, your training gear to go play for Kerry, you might as well pack that pressure into the bag as well with you, because it's there and it's never going to go away. Kerry supporters demand the best from their players. They demand the best from their management groups. They just demand the best all the time because that's the history. That's what they've grown up with. They're used to winning. And the longer it goes on without winning in All-Ireland, the bigger the pressure gets. And we can dress it up and you can try and take that. And I'm sure managements take that pressure off the players and do their best to do so. But it's always lurking in the background. The supporters want success and they're used to it. And it's always going to be there, John. It's always going to be there. So, as I say, it's part and parcel of playing with Kerry. And you either bow under the pressure and put it on your shoulders too much and it has a negative effect, or you use it positively and see it as a challenge and see it as that you're representing these people when you go out onto the pitch and just leave it all out there. Kerry people don't mind losing once they see that you have just, died in your boots, If they see that the effort mightn't have been there, or there might have been a lack of desire, that hurts. That will hurt them. And in fairness, there is many Kerry teams now that can be accused of that, or many Kerry players. So, if you can use that pressure to up your performances and give everything you've got in the green and gold, then the Kerry supporters won't have any issue. And I think for the most part, the Kerry teams do that. This team is young. It's still kind of in a little bit of a rebuilding phase, even though Kerry people hate to hear that phrase down here. In transition, I think it's called, is it? But they want All Irelands. They want the Sam Maguire down in Kerry, and that will never go away. And you have to accept that as a Kerry footballer. It's just, it's ingrained. It has to be ingrained in you. And once you do that and you accept it and you make peace with it and you use it, then you can drive on to be the best you can be.
Yeah, definitely. Suppose your current role, Sean, Kerry under-20 boss or coach, and suppose how are you finding that side of things, and obviously the coaching element of things?
Yeah, I'm certainly not the boss. Declan is the boss, so don't get that one right, John. He'll be ringing me. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, John. When Declan asked me to get involved again, I didn't have to think about it very long. It's a great opportunity for us to give a hand to the next group of Kerry senior footballers. That's what it is at the end of the day. Of course, we have our own competition, which we're hoping to do well in. But at the end of the day, John, it's all about being able to prepare these guys for senior football and have them ready to go when their time comes. And that's where we're at. We're at the cold face of that. It's been difficult because obviously with COVID, we're only back a couple of weeks. So we're trying to work as hard as possible in a very short time frame. We play Cork on the 13th of July, which is what from today, is it 7 weeks? Thereabouts, which seems a long time, but it isn't because it just flies in. So every session is important, and every minute we get to spend with these guys has to be productive. And that's what we're trying to do. Declan has assembled a very, very good management team around him. Declan is Declan. The way he played the game is the way he sees the game, and the way he manages, John. He's very, very enthusiastic. You can see that the young guys have a real respect for him, and he's very good to work with. So we're just hoping that we can get these guys ready for whenever their time comes in Kerry senior jersey, John. That's the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter Keane, Sean, pressure this year, I suppose, to deliver goods.
There is pressure on Peter, yeah, and Peter knows that. He's been involved with Kerry teams at minor level where he had great success, and obviously now as the senior manager, And again, going back to the pressure part of it, Peter knows well the pressure that comes from within Kerry. But again, like a player, as a manager, you can't leave that go on your shoulders. It can't all be about the pressure. You have a job to do, and in front of him, he's got a group of players that he has to get motoring together. He has to put them into a game plan that he feels suits them best and that could win. So look, as a manager, you don't have time to think about the outside pressures. There's enough pressures inside in the squad to be worrying about. So worrying about what supporters are thinking, you can't come into it. And in fairness to Peter, he's a very cool customer, as you can see from his interviews on TV and stuff. He just gets on with the job, and but he knows in the back of his head that in Kerry it's an All Ireland or nothing, and he'll be going all out to try and get us there.
Yeah, absolutely. And to finish up, Sean, nice easy question: who'd have been the best player you played with and against over the years?
The best player I've played with, I suppose for me would have to be. God, it's a difficult one, John. Obviously, that we've named so many, but I'd have to go with the Gooch. Again, just from the pure aspect that he was just able to pull rabbits out of the hat that you just could never expect. I mean, there'd be evenings in training where the Gooch would do something and we'd be training behind closed doors, and it's as if you could just hear a gasp from everybody. And I'm talking about the fellas playing against him and with him on the pitch, because he would just have, after doing something that would just be out of this world, whether it be a pass that no one else saw or a score from a ridiculous angle, or he took on a goal chance when a point was the easier option and he'd bury it, things like that, or he'd flick a ball around a guy, and make a fool out of him, really, So from that point of view, for me, he was the best I ever played with. The guy that I probably played against that would have been the most difficult for me was probably I'm probably going to go with I'm probably thinking up the north, really, and probably it would be it's a toss up between Tyrone and Armagh, John. But Aaron Kernan was very, very difficult to play against, and I'll tell you why. Sorry, I deliberated there for a while, but
no worries.
It was between him and Philip Jordan.
I was going to say Philip Jordan.
Yeah, Philip Jordan from Tyrone was a real tough customer. Didn't give you an inch. Very strong, very fit. But Aaron Kernan, for me, was all those things as well. But what he was also was he was a very, very good attacker.
Yeah.
And in a time in the game where, as a wing forward, you had to be able to really defend and attack, he really tested you, because he loved going forward as well, and he would always try and put you on the back foot. So you had to be on your toes constantly. You were trying to impose your game onto him and try and get scores for your team or set up attacks, whereas he was putting you going the other way as well. He was testing you out the other way. So sorry for taking my time, but it was and Philip Jordan was really good too. But I just edged for Aaron because he just had that ability to just get you thinking both ways. But both fantastic footballers.
Super stuff, Sean. Super stuff. Well, Sean O'Sullivan, thanks a million for joining me on the JMac podcast this week. And of course, the show is sponsored by OrgaRetro.com. Check the website out and use my promo code JMac podcast to get 15% off on the website. Sean, absolute pleasure. It was a great chat. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Sean. Thank you.